Hayward inbounds it to Booker, who tapped it up and in. Oh my goodness, what a play! Booker on his back to the basket from 8 feet out. The pass came to him. He volleyballed it up with 2 hands and it went into the hoop. Trevor Booker, so smart.
This is Gordon Hayward. We are ready to tip it off. Are you? Let's do this.
Do I just play that highlight forever? It makes us all smile every single time. That is the point. Or at some point do we move on? Oh, a lot to cover on tip-off today. NBA's not played along. I'll explain that in a second. But we'll look at the gorgeous Warriors offense, the NBA 5, the disaster in Cleveland, the explanation for the Spurs, and more coming up on today's edition of Tip-Off. How are you? Welcome to the show. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. We do this podcast for you each and every morning, weekday morning, with minor exceptions along the way. We take your questions through the Google Hangout format. If you would like to do that, you're more than welcome to submit your questions as well. We try to do it this way. Our format is we open up with the NBA 5 which is 5 minutes of relevant NBA news. Then we dig deep in on the Utah Jazz and whatever's going on. It often leads to discussions of whoever we're playing or just played. That's how the show works. Thanks for tuning in. If you get a moment, you can follow us on Facebook at David Locke or Locked On Sports. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sports. And we have a great Locked On Sports Google Plus community for you as well. Please join that. And if you get a moment on Stitcher or wherever else, iTunes, please leave 5 stars and a review for us. It helps a great deal in our placement and how we're treated by those companies. All right, that's all set. Let's dig in for today's edition of the NBA 5.
This is Rudy Gobert, and you are Locked On Jazz.
Thank you, Rudy. The disaster that is the Cleveland Cavaliers continues. They lost in Phoenix last night despite LeBron's return. We actually go to Cleveland here shortly. Who knows what they'll look like by then. Brian Windhorst, who's always been very close to the LeBron camp, and there is a little bit of a feeling right now that the things are so divided in Cleveland that various camps inside that organization have media members that are writing stuff on their behalf. I'm not going to give you the details of who's, where, and what. That's unfair. It discredits those writers, and I'm not sure I think that's totally fair. But there are people who feel that that organization has gotten so divided right now that you end up having these writers being funneled by these people, these writers getting stories from these people, and it's that much. Windhorst wrote, who is not been particularly positive toward Blatt in any of his writing. Windhorst wrote today that scouts, GMs, and people around the league, they see players appearing to run different plays than the bench calls. They see assistant coach Tyrone Lue calling timeouts literally behind David Blatt's back during games. They hear Cavs players openly talk about coaching issues with opposing players and personnel. Not once, not twice, but frequently over the past several months. Interesting also kind of this thing in there. They talked about the issue of the strong public backing of Black despite what has been a, quote, obvious disconnect with veteran players, including James. And the article continues to talk about how the Cavaliers are trying to make a strong statement that James is not running the organization. So we have some, it's interesting. I mean, this is the ongoing number one story in the NBA. We can all say, oh, they're below 500, we're not going to talk about them. This is the number one story in the NBA because LeBron can opt out. This article makes it really suddenly seem as though the organization is trying to separate themselves from letting LeBron run them and show that LeBron is being quoted recently saying, I don't sign checks, I just play. So LeBron trying to separate himself or LeBron not getting his way. Very interesting to watch this, and Kevin Love does not play the fourth quarter last night, and he ends up for the second time recently, is really playing quite poorly. Miami, by the way, won yesterday against the Lakers in an ugly game, so I think they're only one back in the loss column of Cleveland. Both of them generally destined to be guaranteed to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, so there's no real concern. Remember a few weeks back, the Spurs played back-to-back triple overtime games, and I don't know if you recall, but at the time I remember back when we played the 4 overtime game in Atlanta, we weren't right for some time afterwards. And I really felt as though that double overtime sequence for the Spurs would have long, lingering after effect, plus their injuries and everything. Well, they are 6-6 since the triple overtime game. Now, the Spurs aren't right, but there's enough issues going around with the Spurs that would tell me that you shouldn't discount them. The only area where I would say that you can suddenly say, okay, the Spurs aren't the whole deal, and you can discount them a little bit, is this. If the Spurs were their regular deal, they may not have gotten caught in back-to-back triple overtime games. Right? I mean, you understand what I'm saying there? That in the sense that the Spurs, I think the reason they're 6-6 in the last 12 is they played back-to-back triple overtime games, and it's such an incredible burden on the body, and to bounce back from that, it's unnatural. You've pushed your body too far, now you're continuing. However, if the Spurs were right, maybe they wouldn't have played back-to-back triple overtime games. Maybe the triple overtime games are actually the sign that something's not right in there. The West is getting more wide open by the day, unless you believe that the Golden State Warriors, who are now 30-5, are simply so much better than everybody else in the NBA. The Warriors go to 30-5 last night. That's only happened 18 times in NBA history. 10 of them, 10 of the 18, won the NBA championship. Not made the finals, won it. 10 of the 18. Prokhorov, the owner of the Nets, is going to sell. This is a worry to me. I think the big macro story NBA, if we go LeBron as a micro rather than day to day, over the next decade or so, is going to be what I would call the Howard Schultz ownership of NBA franchises, which is the worst type you could possibly ever have. Howard Schultz, in his most arrogant, egotistical moments of creating Starbucks, bought the Seattle Supersonics as a public trust, he said in that press conference, really for no different than anybody else buys a NBA franchise, for their ego serving, that they have so much money that they don't know what to do with it, and so for their ego serving, they buy a franchise. And then what Howard Schultz found out 3 or 4 years into being an owner is that the players don't really care about who the owner is. They want their checks. That the players aren't going to go do hunky-dory community building, not community like in the community, but like, ropes courses and things along the way together as a group. They're and Howard, and they're not coming over your house for dinner to, it's just Howard just was, as are most of these guys, it's not the same thing as running a company. The second tier of it that I think is going to be important is that these guys have all won at everything they've ever done. While Steve Ballmer's making millions at Microsoft, Vivek, the Sacramento Kings owner, was making hundreds of millions. The new owner, Mark Cuban, has probably figured this out a little better than anyone else. He's kind of almost a veteran owner. But the new owners in the venture capital firms in New York were winning and now own the Bucks. These guys can all win at the same time in the open market. They can't do that anymore. It doesn't work that way. You play and one team wins and the other team loses. And I think we're going to have a tremendous bail rate, cut the cord rate on ownerships in the NBA. The sale prices are going up so much that, all right, I don't like it. It's not as good as I thought, and I can make another $100 million by just selling the franchise. I think it's bad for the game to have this type of turnover, and I think we're going to have a lot of it. Also, Tyrone Corbin's world is not good in Sacramento. He just disastrously blew the end of the game last night. Somewhat similar to what we saw, where he just didn't manage the end of the game right. The fact is, as I talked about then, the mistake Ty made is he allowed 10 seconds to run off the clock before he fouled. We saw it a bunch of times. Probably, if we looked at win probability, change the Sacramento Kings win probability from less than 1% to half of 1%. Probably irrelevant. But it's the same thing we had. It's one of those things where it just cuts at the fan base's confidence. It gives the fan base a wide open thing to talk about and write about. It's just not good. It's too bad it's starting again for Ty. I do kind of believe, if you look at it's interesting because this is what I find very interesting on the contrast here, is that most bloggers and this is generally a blog Twitter thing. It's not the kind of thing you write up in a newspaper. I'm not criticizing bloggers, but that type of late game analysis is generally something that's there for the internet much more than for newspapers or TV. Maybe for talk radio would fit too. But a lot of those people are very number centric. It's something you can use to analyze a game. It works for it. You have extended pieces. You're dealing with niche audience. And what's interesting to me about that is when you blow these late game chances, and there's no question it's blown, that no one brings up the numbers on win probability, because the impact of it is, I think, almost non-existent, but it is done wrong, and so it's a very easy thing to bang on. It's not good. It's too bad Ty's back into that. All right, that is your NBA 5.
Hey, Jazz Nation, this is Dante X, and thanks for being the best fans in the NBA.
All right, let's look at the Warriors if we can. It's interesting. I have 2 plays. I probably could find 10 more. I mean, their first play of the game's gorgeous, where Klay Thompson comes on a curl off Bogut and beautiful spacing. I mean, just right out of the chute. It's a great play. But I want to look at 2 plays. They actually both happened in the second quarter. The game started to pick up a little bit. They started to execute a little bit better. The Warriors do some interesting things. They run everything back to the middle. Offensively, everything goes back to the middle. And the Jazz were doing a pretty good job of preventing that early on in the ballgame. Then as the game went on, that became more and more difficult to get done. So let me see. Actually, I want to screen share. This is not what I was going to do. I just saved this picture. I'm going to have to lose it here, so I'm going to screen share. I was looking at plays this morning and looking at things, and this just happened to come up. This is like a great this is where I froze it. I don't know why I think this is so funny, but somehow Quinn Snyder and Ian Clark have become one person here. Their foreheads have completely meshed. And then the official, who I can't remember who that is I don't think it's Derek Richardson. It might be. I don't know. He's got this funny look on his face. I don't know. Somehow I found, and it seems like totally disconnected to all the people behind. All right. This is a stupid thing, but hopefully if you just watch that, you smiled. Because, we always get, trust me, you guys do this to me all the time, like the crazy screenshot of me just sitting there. And it happened on that. All right, I want to go back, and we're going to look at 2 Warrior plays, one of which Draymond Green actually misses a shot. That's like how good they are, is that we're at the point where I'm grabbing plays that they miss. I want to see if we can see the video for the first time, if it comes up correctly, and then we'll watch the second, if we can. Let's see if it works. The video, unfortunately, by NBA.com today has not been working very well. And on this site, if I do it, then I end up. So we're just going to watch the squares. I end up getting commercials. I forgot about that. We'll just watch the. We'll watch the little dots. Are you getting the dots? You're getting the dots. All right, so this is a sideline out of bounds play. I just lost the dots. This is a sideline out of bounds play for you, and both of these actually are going to turn out to be sideline out of bounds plays, and they're just terrifically well done with so many options and so much movement. And frankly, the Jazz guard them fairly well in 1 or 2 of these circumstances, but the Warriors they're just too good, and they just keep running it, and they have so much versatility, and their roster just works so beautifully together. What is going? Why is this not working right now? There we go. All right. Are you getting it? You are. All right. So here's the inbound. The red team is the Warriors. I got to do all their numbers off the top of my head, but this is Draymond. I think 12 is Bogut. This is Steph underneath this circle, and this is probably no, Steph's inbounding. So this can be Harrison Barnes, and then what's that? Klay Thompson, I think. So the inbound comes up to Barnes. Watch Steph Curry. Trae really guards him fabulously here. So right out of the inbound, Bogut's got a back pick on Steph Curry. Pretty cool. Trae deals with it well. Hayward does a nice job. He drops down off of Klay, sees what's coming, and is going to block the route of Steph Curry, which allows Trae, he's going to shoot this gap, because this play is really to get Steph a 3 over here. All right, so they block him. Steph flips directions. How good is that? Now, Trae is caught all the way over here. Bogut now is setting the second pick on Steph coming around. In the meantime, Klay now is going to start off a Draymond Green pick, and the ball has worked its way back to the middle of the floor. So there comes Steph off this pick, and Trae actually does a really nice job shooting back on the correct gap to the outside to cut off the passing lane. Perfect timing here by the Warriors. Now this 2-man game here. Bogut's going to come and get the ball, and now Klay will curl off the far side. Or Klay comes up to the top. Here comes, so Klay comes up, gets a pick from Barnes. Little rub. Bogut's got it. Suddenly the floor is spaced all the way to the other side. Klay comes around, gets it. Nice hedge out fake by Klay. He didn't get it yet. Favors does a nice job to deny that. If you watch that, if we back that up, you can see with this little square, the circles, watch how Favors Favors will come up high here, right there, and that prevents the handoff to Clay. And then Favors does a nice job to come back to guard Bogut as he dribbles away. Steph has now come off the double pick on this side. Might be pretty wide open right here. I mean, that's a nice pick by Green. Another action. There's been a lot of action. There's only been 4. There's hardly been any time that's moved here, right? Back cut to Klay Thompson. Jazz guard it beautifully. Look at this drop down by Millsap here. I think Millsap's 13. That's right. Cantor's done a nice job. He's off Draymond Green enough to help out. Trey's trying to recover on Klay or on Steph. And actually, Trey now moves. This is a mistake on. That's why I wanted to show you the video. Trey now slides to Harrison Barnes, who's the open three-point shooter. Cantor sucks down. Draymond Green's actually wide open. There's a mistake on Sports View here. This doesn't actually happen the way it looks right there. And Draymond gets a wide open three with Cantor closing, and he actually misses. But what a cool play. We'll watch it. Just let you watch it in full. Here comes 14 seconds on the shot clock. Off an inbound. Inbound to Barnes. First pick for Steph right there. Second one's coming. He goes back the other way. Another pick for him. Guarded perfectly by the Jazz. Now here comes Klay off multiple action. Steph back the other way. Backdoor. Kick out to Green for 3. I mean, that is just incredible basketball. Let's watch another one. This one, another one out of an inbound. If this doesn't end up on Zach Lowe, I don't know what does. Because this is cool. Another inbound, 14 seconds left. Let's set it. Steph's inbounding here. Klay down low, Draymond, Bogut, Barnes. I think you're going to see an inbound. Excuse me. And then Steph's going to come through, down, and through here. I think you're getting through the middle of the free throw line to for a wall. So let's watch it. Inbound comes. Here's Klay Thompson. And this is all set up. The timing's perfect. Klay works to the right side. Green comes up to the elbows. They go to their elbow set. This is their primary set that they run. And they run a lot of action offense. But if you look at how beautifully it's spaced, the full triangle that shows on the square, on the circles, and then the usual action off this, by the way, is that Klay passes to the elbow, either elbow. He'll go set a pick for Steph Curry in the far left corner. Then they do some neat things. They'll pick back and forth. They'll do some weird action. This one's a variation off it, off a timeout. So from the Jazz standpoint, they're used to this. They're expecting this. There goes the pick. They bring Draymond up a little higher. Actually, Jazz Cantor might have done a nice job pushing him out. Klay alters instead of going on the outside of Draymond like he usually does. Nice job by Cantor to let Gordon through. And then there's the pick for Klay. A lot of teams will switch this. Jazz didn't switch it. They got through it. Dante's on Klay, on Steph. And they'll run some different, usually, actually, sometimes on this, Steph will come off and turn around and pick again for Klay, which is pretty neat stuff. But instead, they hit it to Klay, and now watch, here comes Steph. Watch this pick to get set for Steph Curry. Boom, wall built, goodbye, 3-ball. How gorgeous is that? That is just great basketball. Let's watch it again. Here it is in full time. Klay comes up and gets it. And notice they're all the way to the right side of the floor. They get to their horn set. Runs them through. Now we're working the left side. Klay curls off that pick. Steph just waits, comes across, boom. Not a lot of ways to guard that. Pretty fabulous play. And if you see it it's even better. That's one where, I mean, the dots definitely show it, but it's better almost without the dots. All right, so those were the things I want to show you. The other thing I wanted to do today, that unfortunately I cannot, was I wanted to look at the play of Derrick Favors and how awesome he was last night. Unfortunately, the video on the NBA.com site that I use is mistagged tonight for whatever weird reason. So where I usually am able to go to Derrick and just run his makes and we can run through them. You can't really do that tonight. I can try to pull up individual plays. It gets a little tricky here with screen sharing and a bit cumbersome. But he was just aggressive. He used multiple different things. Let's see what we can pull up.
One miscue, didn't communicate, and Draymond Green hit one against us wide open. But other than that,
we get a little Brad Jones action I wasn't planning on. I don't think this is going to work very well. But here's an early dunk from Derrick where he's just so aggressive as he was all night long. And then we'll look at his shot chart. There's an incredible mix of plays and things that he did throughout the game. So really very, very overall strong performance. And maybe even this is mischarted. We're not going to get anything. Yeah, this, unfortunately, the entire game is, we just got, Brad Jones looking a lot like Derrick Favors right there. The whole game's unfortunately misdone. But if we look at Favors' shot chart, there's a few things that jump out into the brilliance of his performance. We're beginning to see, for the first time, that Derrick's, excuse me, I forgot my water and my coffee this morning, that Derrick's improvement in his mid-range jumper is now opening up opportunities for his rest of his game. He's catching balls at the top, catching balls on the wing, where defenders are getting closer to him than they've been before, and he's taking advantage of it. If you look at his shot plot, which I'll bring up on the screen for you. You only get to see half the floor. I'll make it so you can see. There you go. You got this was a nice turnaround fadeaway jumper here. You have an outside jumper right side. You have a top of the key jumper. He actually only goes 2 of 6 outside. One of these is a 4 shot, but he's gotten good enough people are respecting it. And the really telling number here is 7 of 8 at the rim. That's against Bogut. That's against one of the best rim defenders in the league. Derrick Favors is finishing at 74% in the restricted area. The league average is about 58, 59. Now, he's better than some, but that's one of the best in the league. And so what's beginning to happen, if you look, Favors has this baseline shot he takes a lot. He's now getting to work off that. This shot, he's driving the basket off that, and he's getting better looks. Derrick has 20 and 10 in 4 of the last 5 games. And it's a dominating 20 and 10. It's very, very impressive in so many ways what he's doing. It's very exciting. Rudy Gobert's numbers last night, defensively and offensively, are telling, but they're misleading. The Warriors without Steph on the floor are just not as good as you would, as you'd suspect. Numerous, but he's the biggest plus-minus player in the NBA. In the whole fourth quarter, he was off the floor, and they went 6 of 24. So Rudy's numbers are skewed to look as good as they did defensively. What is not deniable is the fact that the Warriors shot 71% when Rudy was on the floor, bench. And what's not deniable is the Jazz didn't score when Rudy's on the floor again. My dad said to me, boy, it'd be really nice if Rudy could just make that shot if nobody could guard him, but he can't. And they're not guarding Rudy. And so, if we watch some offensive plays of the Jazz, and maybe I'll do this tonight and get it ready for tomorrow, with Rudy on the floor, and we watch the dots aren't spreading out. It's difficult. So the Jazz are going to have to, that's time, it takes progression. They're going to have to continue to work on that. Interesting pace of play numbers for you. Very good conversation yesterday with Quinn Snyder on pace of play. Andy Larson wrote about it in Salt City Hoops. But what he was basically, Quinn was saying, sure, early on I thought pace would get some early shots. It's not who we are. What he wants them to do is play early, get an advantage, then work the ball with the advantage to get an even better shot. That's the concept. Trey has a tendency to come back for the basketball. If you actually watch when Dante's on the floor, the first pass is often out to the free throw line, but then Dante's not doing anything with it when it comes to the front court. So it's actually a little bit of, either way. But one thing I thought was interesting that I looked up today was percentage of the Jazz points that are in the fast break. And interestingly, the Jazz are right at about league average. The Warriors they score 19% of their points in the fast break. Phoenix scores 18% of their points in the fast break. The Jazz are about 15th in the league at 13% of their points in fast break. So while we play with a very slow pace, as much as what that is that when we get into the half court, we're leading the league in passes, we're throwing a lot of passes, and therefore we are slowing the game down a great deal. I wanted to give you opponents' points on the fast break, but of all weird things, that NBA is not my friend today. NBA.com has opponents' points off turnovers, opponents' points off. Maybe I can do defensive scoring. Maybe I can find it. Opponent shooting. I'm not sure I can find it. I'll see what I can. I couldn't find it. So the other one that is just interesting is field goals assisted versus unassisted. And most of our field goal, we actually have, for all of our passing, we're 10th highest in unassisted field goals. Atlanta is, and the Warriors, and this is actually an interesting note. Like we're not either making shots. Some really good teams. Atlanta's at 32%. The Warriors at 34%. That's all. Clippers are at 36%. Otherwise, Wizards are at 36%. Those are the four best. Their buckets are all assisted. Phoenix, Oklahoma City, Toronto, Sacramento, Orlando, and Charlotte play the most one-on-one of anyone in the NBA. Then we're not far behind that. So for all of our passing, we have a high percentage of our field goals being unassisted, 44%, which I was a little surprised about to see that, because I think that's not. I don't think that's how Quinn intends it. Now that might be that some of our guys just aren't making shots, right? That could be all sorts of things. I'm not entirely sure. That could be numerous different aspects of things along the way. The other one that's interesting that they have now is in this regard is scoring late in the shot clock. And the Jazz do have many more possessions late in the shot clock than Quinn would like, but it might just be, frankly, who we are. That's. I think that just might, I don't know. It might be our style. It might be more of the style than Quinn thinks. I don't think so. I think he'd like these guys. We've got a lot of guys on the floor during different times during the game that just don't shoot. But we're using 25% of our possessions in the final 7 seconds. Now, what's interesting, and I don't have league averages on this. I'd like to get it. I'm going to see if I can get it today. We're shooting 42% from 4 to 7 seconds and 38% in the last bit with a pretty decent effective field goal percentage. I actually think that's probably pretty high. I think we shoot better in those circumstances than most teams in the league. And we don't have frankly, in the middle of the shot clock, we're shooting 43%. So it doesn't drop until we get into the final 4 seconds of the clock. If we can shoot in the first 6 seconds, mathematically you're always better. But that means you got an open look early. So we'll look at it. I'll look at it some more. I don't have any league average numbers on that, so I think it's very difficult to try to figure that out. But I thought that was some interesting stuff on pace of play from Quinn. All right, let's take some questions. We're long into this already. Questions? Maybe none today. No questions. Oh, makes it easy. Any questions on? If you guys could figure out how to ask your questions in the format, not on the event page, that'd be great. You mentioned the Jazz were pretty quiet would be pretty quiet through the trade deadline. Would you tend to place much value on Booker, given his tenacity off the bench and his favorable contract? Most good teams already have a third big that's good, if not better, than Trevor Booker. Think about it. I mean, Warriors have David Lee. Portland's got Chris Kaman. Maybe Portland could add. I'm trying to think who their backup to Aldridge is, but that's 8 minutes a night that you're trading for. Clippers thought they did, and Spencer Hawes. You run through San Antonio's got numerous. Oklahoma City's got Collison, as well as, depending on what your viewpoint, Kendrick Perkins is, whether he's a starter or not. So that's a hard possibility. I mean, it's a nice contract. You can pick up the option or not at the end of the year, so it's probably more tradable. Steve Novak is a primary shooter. Might be a possibility for somebody. Wouldn't be totally bad for us to get that off our books either. Otherwise, I just don't see us having a lot of trade assets at the deadline. Eric Holmes, how do you feel the Jazz compare with the 08-09 Thunder that went 23-58 before becoming a 50-win playoff team the following season? Obviously, we don't have KD, Russ, and Harden, but we do have depth and potential to jump in the playoff race. The Western Conference is better now than it was then, but I do see some similarities, and we don't have KD, Russ, and Harden. If you go back and look at that team, I think that team started like 3-20, and then finished the year 20-30 or something. And in that sense, I do see, Eric, a comparison. Whether that means we make the jump to 50-win playoff team next year, that seems to be a big ask, particularly with where the West is. And Brandon Rust tried to troll me, saying that Dante should have gone to college. Dante just needs to play harder. Dante needs to play every minute with more tenacity than he is right now. He's gotten comfortable. All right, that is tip-off. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a good one. See ya. Bye.